I'm Asia, part two, and this is going to be us spiritually navigating this calendar, this perspective, this perception of a calendar, um, a period in time. Um, Spiritually navigate. And when I say that, I mean we're going to dive into the spirit. We're going to dive deeper into the elements, the characteristics of this calendar and its use and its foundation, its forming, it's being molded and shaped, because this is absolutely a shape, a molding of a spiritual, natural, not a, of spiritual, natural principles. Okay, so and the way we're going to able to spiritually navigate, see through, because we're taking a spiritual perspective, we're going to focus, pay attention to um, symbology and imagery, and see how imagery and symbology is used in order to carry on a story, a narrative. So right now you are getting a story, and this will be a form of a narrative, because this is something that has been adopted and seen as uh, a worldly acceptable view. Does just because it's worldly acceptable doesn't mean that it is all and everything, because there's many different ways to view these things. So we're gonna spiritually dive deep, get into the spirit. We're gonna get beyond the physical symbolic forms by using story, my words, communication, verbal, the mind, intellect, analyzing, observing. Our spirit is observing information, um, which is what we can call intuiting, using our intuition to see for ourselves what these things are and what is true to us. Okay, so it's not about belief. This is about observation. This is how we observe facts. And that's what we're doing. We're intuiting, observing facts and truths. Um, the light and the dark, the positive and the negative, the spirit behind things. So, January, to begin with, this is all about the placement, mostly about the placement of the sun. So, January is a placement of the sun. When the sun is in the location of Capricorn, it's in that universal location. Not only in its physical aspect of the sun being there, but that spiritually, our physical, uh, our physical world that we live in is just a reflection of what is happening into spirit. That's the duality. That's the mirror. That's two ways of seeing. If you want to see yourself, you go look in the mirror. And the moon is a representation of the spiritual mirror, the feminine. So January is a time when the sun is in Capricorn. Okay, so when it's talking about January and the new year, it's about things becoming anew, right? New ways of seeing, new forms, new beings, new expressions, new creativity, new plans, new goals. This is the time that energy is expressed through the universe, and we get to identify the truth of that by experiencing our daily lives and what we've experienced over our time cycle, our years, in our interaction relationship with nature, and experiencing um, the time of birth, the springtime, the spring, is when everything is made anew in nature, and that also has to do with us, if we're able to perceive those aspects of our lives, those natural aspects of our lives. January. So we know that the universal, okay, because that's where knowledge is built off of, is universal knowledge, natural life, and life has to do with both spirit and physicality. So birth is really the time of April, when the springtime, which is also a transition. Birth doesn't just appear from out of nowhere, so that also lets you know that there was a form preceding an actual birth, and this is through the cycle of death. So cycles are, there's times before something becomes anew. So January is actually coming on its way out evolving through the cycle of death, becoming to the time of birth in Aries for things to become anew. The death is represented in many different forms, not just in the death of a body, but we go through death in many different experiences. When we move on from different things, different people, different experiences. It's a sense of putting death to those things. And we go through all these different type of life cycles when we starting things new relationships, new business opportunities, new jobs. That's a sense of birth in our lives. So it's very important to be in harmony with the natural aspects of ourselves, our times of birth, our times of death, because that gives us a better control and governance over our own beings, is by us being able to perceive what is happening spiritually and know how to maneuver, have a sense of direction and clarity through this physical life that we're actually living in. So that's just on January. I see, that's what I'm saying. I'd be going deep, and it's already 6 minutes. So 2022, that's the number of years. That's the representation of a year. Okay. It's good to really check out, a well-informed astrological chart, because it'll give you a lot of information, especially when you know how to identify energies. 2022 can also be represented as year 6. We can look at this through numerology and breaking this down to a 6. A 6 is a number that carries a whole lot of energies. 6 carries a whole lot of energies, very much of creation and sex and multiplication, multiplying, okay? Sex is a way of multiplying. So that goes through many different forms. That's how we have products that we're able to buy at stores, is by the interaction of sex. So much so that we have a masculine and feminine, actual man and a woman create a child. It's creation. You can dive deep. That's why it's good to get into the essence and the spirit of life, because it gives you a broader perspective of what's happening all around you, and gives you a relationship, more of a better relationship with the universe and God. But you have to identify the many ways in which God expresses itself and communicates, and there's many different dimensions, and we shouldn't limit ourselves to just a limited perspective, especially when it has to do with our everyday lives and us as a being. So that's 2022. That's a location of the sun going in 2022 cycles, or it's in the cycle of a 6, because the numbers 0 through 9 are also a representation of a cycle of completion, of learning. The 9 also represents learning. These things should be taught along when these children are learning their numbers, not just how to use numbers, but why they exist. That's why kids are amazing with creative minds, because they want to know why. And for some reason, we have used our why power for we've used our why power for reasons that are not in harmony with us building and growing as beings. So why definitely serves a purpose, especially when it comes to matters of the truth. The letter Y, that goes deep. So it just gets so interesting. So these are things that we should be talking and discussing about and having these conversations, because it just widens a whole different perspective of life, especially in this boring ass Rona shit we living in now. The shit is, I don't know, it's been old to me. It's been old since centuries ago. So that's how this type of shit I'm on. Thousands of years ago, this shit was old. Let's see. The numbers. We were just talking about numbers. And then the degrees. So I'm going to get into the degrees, but I went on also the 7. Okay. That's what I was missing. Okay. The 7, that number 7, here's the number. These energies all tied together. That's where you start to get you're chiseling out a perspective of a natural perception of life, is being able to see it through many dimensions. It gives you a more holistic point of view through the different dimensions. Perception, the eye is a circle because you have to have a rounded point of view. What else? So, okay. The days of the week are attributed to the planets, which we also track on the star map, which are actually rotating and they're doing their thing simultaneously as we're living our days. We just choose to identify their energies or not, just depending on our level of awareness and our knowing and our attention and our intentions. So, Sunday for the sun, Monday for the moon, Tuesday for Mars, Wednesday for Mercury, Thursday for Jupiter, Friday for Venus, Saturday for Saturn Day. So these things are relatively obvious, but they tend to be overlooked just based off of a fact of a belief system, as if astrology is a belief system. No, we are actually using aspects of astrology in order for us to even have a calendar in the first place. So that don't even make sense, and that's nature and connection to nature. Connection makes sense. It's an agreement. Agreement is very important to understand on many different dimensions because it's how a big reason why we get fucked over. Now, spiritually, so it's just another representation of this. We can track January energies on the clock. It'll be in the time frame of Capricorn. It tells you about the hours. It gives you the time, the location, but it doesn't tell you the other information because this is a symbol of omission. You know, that's what we do when we create symbols. We are highlighting information, and everything else is in the spirit. It's in the background. It's in whatever you want to call the the spiritual, the environment that we live. The environment we live is also spiritual, not just physical. It's all happening simultaneously, just based on your perception of these things happening. So this is a clock, and this is also a representation of us because we have all these locations within us because we have all these aspects of life. Being, thinking, communicating, feeling, serving, working, entertainment, love, children, family, right? These are commonalities, natural principles of our lives that we all have a connection to, but it's just a way of seeing things. Gematria. This is a calculation of our many different shapes and forms. But what we do is we adopt other people's images of these shapes and forms, and we have a hard time identifying these things within ourselves just based off of imagery. So geometry is just another way of measurement, mapping out forms, and we have many different forms spiritually, and the star map will give us a way to map out these forms and have a better understanding of how to see these things, not with our two eyes, but the combination of our senses, all of our other eyes, gives us a holistic, more holistic point of view, especially in regards to the masculine and feminine and the Trinity, how that carries out in everything. I'm gonna get that boy. Get that boy. Same thing I just said is with the compass and the map. Okay, not only do we map out this existence physically, but this is also a representation of a spiritual map because this is duality. They are both existing at the same time. So once you mapping something out physically, we're also doing that shit spiritually. But a lot of us are backwards. We supposed to be mapping shit out from our spirit first before we handle it physically, and that depends on how well we're able to use our natural motherfucking abilities. Okay? Our power. We keep giving our power away to all these other. Don't even get me started. Mayan calendar is just an interpretation of how they're able to track these energies through their systems of communication and imagery. This is their imagery. They weren't using words, they were using symbology, drawings. That was their form of images at this time when they formulated this map based on their system of connection, their language. But language has a way of separating the depth and meaning of energy and symbols and life experiences, because you can't say a whole life experience in a word, but you can interpret a whole life experience by looking at a picture, because it gives life to the imagination, the intuition, the workings of the spirit to interpret and learn. These things don't have to be so technical. Fuck.